Hello everyone, I'm your hostess with the mostest 8-second gaming, and in today's video we are going to be talking about the ultimate conduit guide to give you everything you need to know to become an absolute beast on this legend. She's new, everyone's excited about her, but not a lot of people understand how to really play her, so let's break it all down. But just quickly, if you guys are here and you're looking to take your Apex skill to the next level, then you need to check out the GameLeap website right now. Over there we have top level coaches including myself creating the best, most highly informative guides to make you the best player you can possibly be. We have legend guides, gun guides, VOD reviews, and much more, so click the link in the description, pick yourself up a membership, and start to improve today. Now with that covered though, let's hop into things, and we're going to be talking about literally everything you need to know. So we're going to be talking about her abilities, we're going to be talking about some tips for those abilities, and just general tips for her. We're also going to be talking about the mentality that you want to have while playing Conduit, and also the positioning. But let's start off with the abilities, because you need to understand your character's abilities in order to actually get the maximum use out of them. Now when talking about the abilities though, we have to start with the class passive, because those are also very important. And Conduit is a support legend, and supports are actually pretty unique because they do actually get two different class passives. The first part is that they can open up the extended compartment in some of the blue supply bins to reveal some of the secret hidden items. These items will always be healing items or even a survival item, but they will never be anything weapon related or anything like that. They're always going to be support style items with health regeneration, shield regeneration, or a survival item. And the secondary part of the class passive is the fact that they can craft their allies' banners even if they have timed out at a replicator. And it doesn't even have to be them that is alive in order to craft banners. As long as you have a support legend on your team, everyone can craft the banners. And that is absolutely huge because typically supports aren't the most mobile or agile legends, so they have a really hard time escaping fights if things go south. So even if you die, but your teammate that's playing a slipperier legend like an Octane or Pathfinder gets away, they can craft the banners, respawn you and your teammate, and you are good to go. And this season respawning is even stronger because you come back with the weapons and the armor that you had previously, so it's not as big of an issue if you do die. But that's the class passive done, so let's move into the actual passive, and this is called Savior's Speed. Now with this, Conduit gets a booster speed when you are sprinting towards allies that are out of your tactical range. Now the speed boost is a 30% speed boost, so it's not as hefty as some of the initial numbers were thinking, but while active, Conduit gains boost to her sprint speed as long as the following conditions are met. First off, Conduit must be sprinting. Walking or sliding will not allow the passive to trigger. Second, Conduit must have one or more allies outside of her tactical range, which is 50 meters long. Third, Conduit must be facing such an ally for at least 3 seconds. And kind of 3.5 because this does go with number 3, Conduit's crosshair must be rather close to the ally for the initial 3 seconds. So with that last one, it just kind of allows you to have a little bit more control over when your passive does actually proc, because sometimes you might not want the speed boost because speed boosts can throw you off. There are a few different reasons why you wouldn't want to activate this boost at certain times, so it is nice that you have to have these conditions met because it gives you a little bit more control. Now this effect will end when any of the conditions aren't met for more than 3 seconds. So if you look away from your teammates or you get within tactical range, the effect will just cut off. But it doesn't have a cooldown, so if you get back outside tactical range or you start to look at them again, you will be able to activate it once again. And because this passive can persist indefinitely as long as these conditions are met, you can use this to catch up to legends that have movement-based abilities such as a Pathfinder or an Octane, even if they're using abilities to try and get away from you. The boost of speed will be very helpful in order for you to stay close to your allies because Conduit is a support. She doesn't really have any other abilities to help her get close to her teammates. And because she's a little bit more aggressive, this also does help her in fights to not be singled out. That boost of speed can be very helpful in a lot of different situations, so always keep it in the back of your mind when you need to be meeting one of those conditions. But that is her passive covered, so let's move into her tactical, and there is a lot of information in this one, so I hope you guys are ready. And Conduit's tactical is called Radiant Transfer. With this, you send a surge of energy to a teammate and yourself, temporary regenerating shields when in danger. Now there are 3 different phases when it does come to this tactical. Phase 1 is what's known as regenerating shields. During this phase, damaged and broken shields are reinforced with temporary shields. This phase lasts for 8 seconds, and each tick temporary shields are granted so long as the total shield health isn't full. While the target's total shield health is full, more temporary shields are not granted. These wasted hit points can't be regenerated later either. And over the duration, up to 60 hit points worth of temporary shields are granted. And the temporary shields are granted at a rate of roughly 7.5 hit points worth of shields per second, or 10 hit points every 1.35 seconds. And do note that any damage while regenerating your shields will stop the regeneration process. So always make sure either you or your teammate are behind some form of cover before you use your tactical, because you want to get the maximum amount of shields you possibly can from this. But that's phase 1 covered, so let's move into phase 2, and this is what's known as temporary shields hold. During this phase, any temporary shields that were granted during phase 1 remain, but no new temporary shields are granted. This phase lasts for 30 seconds, and all this really is just the phase between phase 1 and phase 3 where your shields hold and the shields that you regenerated are just there on you now, and you can play around that. And 30 seconds is a lot of time, so if you regenerated the maximum amount of shields, you have a lot of different playability and flexibility around this. But phase 2 is very simple, so let's move into phase 3, and this is temporary shields decay. Now at this point, after the 30 seconds of phase 2 end, any remaining temporary shields begin to decay twice as fast as they are gained in phase 1 until all temporary shields are gone. And that could take up to 4 seconds with the maximum amount of temporary shields still remaining on top of you, but the amount of time will depend on how much shield you actually have remaining after that 30 seconds. But the decay does happen very rapidly, so you should always be aware of when this is going to start happening, because you don't want to be caught off guard with somebody starting to swing you as soon as your shields are leaving. Thankfully, there is a little UI that will show you exactly when your shields are going to be going away, so do be paying attention for that. Now those are the 3 phases, but there are also some important things you should note when using this ability. First off, this ability is always applied to Conduit when used. You can use it on yourself even if your teammates are out of range or they are dead. But if they are in range of you, or they happen to walk back into your tactical range after you initially used it, you will be able to apply the buff to them as well. And like mentioned before, this ability does have a range of 50 meters. So it does have a decent range. Now also, the ability does have a cooldown of 20 seconds from when the ability is used initially. And if you remember from before, the temporary shields have a total of 30 seconds in phase 2 before they decay. So if you cycle this properly and you use all of the temporary shields to their maximum effectiveness, you can actually cycle shields without having to heal ever. But do keep in mind the actual timer doesn't show up until a few seconds after phase 1 does end. And due to the duration of the temporary shields and the cooldown of the ability, now some people are still a little bit confused about this, so let me clear up the air. If you have any temporary shields on you, you can still heal your actual shields on top of that. It will just take away any temporary shields that you do have. So if you are missing any armor, you can pop a shield cell, you can pop a shield battery and get your actual armor back, but the temporary shield will then go away. You don't get any extra hit points on top of that. It's not like a Revenant armor. But with this ability, you can allow you and your teammates to be very aggressive in fights, because if you get your armor cracked, you don't have to spend a lot of time healing your shields, because all Conduit has to do is pop this ability and you're back in the fight within a few seconds. It also gives you more flexibility when healing, because with these temporary shield heals, you can then pop a syringe or a med kit and still have shields in case somebody does swing you and tries to be aggressive. The best comparison that some people can make if you're still a little bit confused is just imagine Lifeline's Dock Drone, but for shields, and you can use it at range and you don't have to stand near it. But that is her tactical done, so let's move into her ultimate, Energy Barricade. With this, you deploy an array of shield jamming devices which damage and slow enemies. Now when this ability is activated, a delivery device is lobbed forward from Conduit. When the delivery device reaches its destination, it deploys an array of 7 shield jammers in a line. Now the middle jammer is always dropped straight down from where you aimed it, while the other 6 jammers land to the left and right of the middle one. And do keep in mind that the jammers can bounce off walls and other surfaces, but if the jammers don't bounce, they are deployed so that they have slight overlaps, forming a continuous line of effect. Also, when they initially land, they do take 4 seconds to prime, but once primed, they activate for 60 seconds before disappearing or until they are destroyed. Each jammer hovers slightly above the ground and creates a visible zone of effect in a sphere around the node. And the radius of the sphere is approximately 10 meters. Now whenever an enemy does enter the range of one of these jammers, they take 10 damage per second and are slowed by 15%, resetting every second. And despite what some in-game descriptions might have you think, the effect of the jammers aren't stronger or even weaker against shields than health. It's always going to be hitting the exact same damage. Now like I mentioned before, each jammer can be destroyed, but each one does have 250 hit points. So it's pretty hefty, and it is going to take a little bit of commitment to actually blow one up. Now this does have a few different applications in game because of the way that it is designed. With this, Conduit can use it in one of 3 main different ways. She can use it to be defensive, offensive, or to corral enemies. If you want to use it offensively, all you really want to do is throw it so that it is behind a team so that they don't really have a way to run away from you. Their only real option is to actually fight you. If they try to run away, they're going to hit the jammers, they're going to get slowed, they're going to get damaged, you're going to see it, and you're going to get some free shots on them. If you ever get free shots at an opponent, it is more than likely that you are going to kill them. This should only really be used if you're looking to absolutely deathball a team and roll over top of them and you're scared that they're going to just run away. Alternatively, for an offensive use, you can throw it right on top of a team if you are looking to flush them out of cover. Though, because it does have the initial time of you shooting the devices and for them to land and then prime for 4 seconds, there is a lot of opportunities for the enemies to get out of range of these before they actually activate and become useful. So do keep that in mind whenever you are using these, because you have to shoot them where you think that the enemies are going to go and not usually where they are, because it's a little bit easy to get out of them. But as for the defensive use, this just buys you and your allies time if you need to heal up or do anything else while a team is pushing you. If you shoot these in between you and the enemy team, it's going to be a little bit harder for them to actually get to you without using any movement abilities or anything like that, which is good if you can force something like that out before the fight really even starts. If you make a Pathfinder uses grapple or Horizon user gravity lift or something like that, that is a big ticket item that is now out of the fight that you know is on cooldown that you can play around. But if they don't blow an ability like that, then you have a decent amount of time for you and your allies to either heal up or rotate away to a new position in order for you to have a more advantageous fight. And because each jammer does have 250 health if the enemies want to shoot it, then at least one weapon is going to be reloading, and it might give you an opportunity to shoot them while they are distracted. And then the third option for corralling teams is just cutting off one rotation option so that you force the enemy team to go where you want. This isn't exactly the same as the offensive use, because you're basically just sending an enemy team to somewhere that you want rather than them being able to run where they want. The same can be done with something like a catalyst wall. So if you've ever seen somebody throw a catalyst wall so that teams have to go a different choke point or something like that, it's the exact same idea. This one is especially useful in endgame situations where you can cut rotations off for teams so you will force other two teams to fight, and you can then just go in and clean up the kills. This one is going to be a little bit harder to learn because it does take a decent amount of in-game knowledge to know where to put these jammers down to apply the right amounts of pressure to actually corral a team. But over time, once you kind of use these and understand a little bit, you will start to pick up the knowledge that you do need, and you will start to understand where you need to place them. Now, that was a ton of information, but those are her abilities covered. So let's move into the next thing, which is going to be a loadout that I do recommend you guys run. Now, Conduit is a support legend. So typically support legends are in the back line. They're holding things down for their team. They're either providing cover fire for their entry and secondary fragger, or they're creating an area so that they can come back and heal if they do get cracked or anything like that happens. Conduit does do that in certain fights, but she's also a little bit more aggressive than other supports. She needs to be within tactical range in order to help her teammates. And with the speed boost, she's actually a little bit slipperier than most supports in fights, so she can actually play a little bit more aggressive than other supports do. Now, normally I would suggest something like a marksman rifle and a shotgun as a support legend, but Conduit can be super aggressive in times, so I do recommend a more aggressive loadout that fits her a little bit better. And for this, you're going to want to run an assault rifle and an R99. Now, when it comes to the assault rifle, the three main choices are definitely going to be the flatline, the hemlock, or the nemesis. I don't recommend a havoc because it doesn't really do well in medium ranges if you don't have a turbocharger, and relying on a gold hop-up is never a good thing. And crafting a 301 right now isn't really that good of an option. There are plenty of good assault rifles on the ground, and you'd rather use your crafting materials for something more useful like shield batteries, or even saving it to craft banners in case you do have to. Now, when it comes to actually picking an assault rifle for Conduit, it is 100% up to you which one you do want to use. Which one are you more comfortable with? Which one are you more confident with? Which one do you think you are going to do better with? Me personally, I think the Nemesis is the strongest option on Conduit because it does have high amounts of damage, but also once you get it amped up, it's basically like a fully automatic assault rifle. It's not like a burst at all, but some people don't like burst weapons, so the flatline is also a good option. But you definitely want to run an R99 on Conduit because the R9 right now is just the king of the SMGs, and an SMG fits her playstyle perfectly. The SMGs give you a little bit more flexibility in the close range fights because you don't have to be right next to someone. You can have a little bit more flexibility, you can be a little bit further away, you can play certain angles that you normally wouldn't be able to play with a shotgun and still be perfectly fine. And Conduit, being a support legend, is going to be a little bit further away at some points, So having that flexibility is a great option. Now you can swap the R99 out with a card depending on which one you find, but I do highly recommend that you do pick up the R9 as soon as you do find one. I think it's just a better option right now. The R9 is just an absolute beast, and the card is slightly behind it in the tiers. But that is the loadout done, so let's move into the next thing, and that is going to be positioning. Now we have talked about positioning very briefly throughout this entire thing, but I want to go into it more detail here. Now with Conduit, she is a support legend, and though I have mentioned that she's a little bit more aggressive, she is still having to do support jobs. You need to be holding down the backline for your team. Even though you're a little bit more aggressive and you can be a little more up close and personal in fights, you still have to do the support's job. You still have to be looking out for your team. So your positioning should always be a little bit further in the back, holding really strong angles for you to give cover fire for your team, but still having enough line of sight where you can provide cover and also provide your tactical when need be. That's why I recommended that you guys run an assault rifle, because when you're holding these angles, you need to have those high burst amounts of damage so that whenever an enemy peeks or if an enemy tries to swing your teammate, you have the option to help them out and you're not just stuck with a single fire weapon. On certain support legends like a Gibraltar, marksman and sniper rifles are fantastic, but on Conduit, they're not as good because you still need to be aggressive with her. Now, if your team is deathballing and you are trying to like either roll a team or take their position away, then you can be right next to one of your teammates. Typically, it is going to be the secondary fragger because they're going to be a little bit easier to stick onto. It's very rare that you're ever going to be right next to your entry fragger when going into a fight. Also, when you are just running around the map and you are trying to get from point A to point B, it is best that you do stick next to another one of your teammates because again, you don't want to be singled out. Support legends are easy because they don't really have any movement abilities. Even though Conduit does have the speed boost, she can still be singled out. But if you are right next to one of your teammates, it's very hard for teams to be able to split you guys up. And I say that you want to be right next to the secondary fragger because typically they are going to be a little bit easier for you to stick onto. Entry fraggers want to be the first one into the fight. They want to be the one that's taking the initial brunt of the force. So you want to let them do that without you risking yourself going down. Because if you go down, then nobody's going to be able to support the team and it's going to be a little bit harder for your teammates to win the fight. But that is the positioning covered, so let's move into the next thing, and that is going to be actually the mentality that you want to have when playing a support legend. Now, mentality on supports is a huge thing that not a lot of people really understand or even talk about, but I actually have a lot of experience playing supports. Back in the day when I played competitive and played ALGS, I was a support main, and even now when I play ranked with my friends, I do still run the support role. So I do have a decent amount of knowledge when it comes to support. But with your mentality as a support player, it's really tough because it's not something that a lot of people can do because you have to drop your ego 100% of the time because you're not the one that is going to be getting the glory. You are making your teammates look good. You are setting them up for plays so that they can do what they need to do, being the entry fragger and the secondary fragger, getting all the kills, getting all the recognition, getting all the clips, stuff like that. As a support player, you're kind of like the offensive and defensive line on a football team. When you do your job, nobody really notices, but it makes everybody else on the team look good because they can do their jobs. But when you don't do your job, you try to show off something like that, then everybody notices because stuff goes south very quickly. Support is an extremely tough role to play because a lot of people want to be the one in the spotlight. They want to be the ones making the flashy plays. But supports don't really do that very well. They do well though is allow their teammates to be set up for all of those good plays. So you have to be willing to accept that you are not really going to get a ton of recognition, but your teammates are going to look fantastic. And that's still a good thing because if your teammates are looking good, they're doing their job, you're winning fights, you're going to be gaining RP, you're going to be ranking up, you're going to be doing better as a player, and that is a good thing overall. So you have to be willing to take those victories over being a really flashy player. Now, if you guys want to see some Conduit plays in action, I've been playing her a lot on my Twitch stream over on twitch.tv/8secondgaming. And if you have any other Conduit questions, feel free to drop them in the comments down below and I will do my best to answer them. Also, if you're looking to stay up to date with the latest and greatest Apex Legends tips, tricks, and news, don't forget to smash that like, subscribe button. Thanks all for watching once again, 8 Second Gaming, and I will see you guys in the next one.